Welcome to Empower to Grow, the podcast. I am your host, Hanan Al-Basha. Hello, everyone, and welcome to a new episode of Empower to Grow in Business, the podcast. I'm your host, Hanan Al-Basha. I'm so happy to be here with you. I think anyone who's been watching me for a while knows that every guest I'm excited about, but sometimes I'm extra excited about some guests because, well, everyone is a friend and everyone is amazing and expert at what they do. But this lady is way beyond my own expectations. She's aspirational on every level. Dr. Amal Al-Malki is like, I don't know how to introduce you. Qatari advocate, activist, scholar, youngest ever Qatari female dean in Qatar. Welcome, Dr. Amal.
Thank you, Dr. Hanan. It's a pleasure to be with you.
I'm so happy. Beyond just the business part, I know that we connected on so many levels, so many parallels of lives. And it is such an honor to be having this conversation with you today because you have a perspective on life and on business that is completely different. But before we delve into that, I would love people to know you more. So please tell us more about yourself.
Ouch. This is one of the hardest questions, really, because you can't define yourself in a word or two. So, you know how we play different roles in life. So I'm a wife, I'm a mother, I'm an academic, I'm an educator, I'm a gender equality advocate, but I believe I'm much more at the intersections of all of those layers. So, because at the intersection is when you kind of tap into your strength in here and mesh the personal here with the political here, with the professional here, and come up with something that could create change. So I believe I'm a human at heart, but I'm very proud to be a mother and a woman, of course.
Yep, I know. I know today we're talking about culture and language and innovation and how those impact. But I want to touch something that is at the core of who you are, and that's the advocacy part. So you're involved in a number of organizations talking about advocacy, and you realize it's not just about headlines. You want to be where the work is. Can you tell us a bit more about that?
Well, I'll start by acknowledging my positionality, right? So I come from a state of privilege. Yet, without romanticizing it, this state of privilege is still carries some disadvantages. So as a woman, there are certain disadvantages associated to who you are as a woman, your limitations within the social structure and all that. So it was very important for me from day one, really, since I opened my eyes to understand where I am and my connection to the world. You start with the connection through your parents, then through your friends, then through your society. But there was something very big inside of me that wanted to come out. And at some point, and maybe later in life, after studying, after delving in multiple theories to understand where you are, I found myself in theories of gender, women studies, and post-coloniality that tackles representation and identity, which could take multiple forms, right? You've got the linguistic representation, but also you've got the cultural, the social, and more. So yes, I felt that I needed to connect. I am an Arab and a Muslim woman, without conflating both, because not all Arabs are Muslims and not all Muslims are Arab. But I do belong to a bigger world that might need some of what I've accumulated in my life through studies and through research. And at some point I said, that's not enough. Teaching is the love of my life. I love teaching, really. My career started as a professor at Carnegie Mellon. But then I said, there's much more than writing books, really. Sometimes I wonder, why waste 2 to 3 years to write a book when you could do more? So I wanted to be a journalist all my life. So looked at journalism, and I am impacted and influenced by journalism and media, definitely. But and language transcends, all
Yeah.
of those
Yeah.
fields. And yes, I connected with women. So through advocacy, through women organizations, it started during COVID when we discovered that women were the weakest link and they were
Yes.
left behind. And since then, I've been really active in networks and with women organizations.
Yep. And I think one of the tools that you use with that goes across every role that you play is language. Let's talk about the importance of language in your life, because I know for you, you just said it, language transcends all. How do you see it?
Oh, God. It's a living being. Language is a living being. Language could define us, but we seriously define language. And this is why we say language is beyond linguistics. It's more of the cultural values it carries. So, let alone when you speak multiple languages, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you're impacted and influenced by different modes of communication and all that. And we're very global right now. We're extremely global. All of us speak minimum two languages. And I've always spoken English and Arabic, even inside my house, as I grew up. So that was that, and I saw how language can build intimacy, but also can cause hatred.
Yeah.
And then through my studies, I saw how narratives were established and constructed. And a narrative is a story, really, a
Yeah.
made up story that
Yeah.
through circulation, perpetuation, having more people buying into it, and through consistency and long term, it becomes a narrative. And a narrative is there to stay, and it impacts everything we do. Look around us, how people in the West perceive us. Like Gaza has and the genocide in Gaza has exposed how the colonial narrative is so persistent and still alive. So yes, I'm very conscious about how language, terminology, the way we are represented, the way people represent us, shape our realities.
Yes, and that is important. And I love the part how you say that even when you speak another language, that could embody a state of mind for you or an emotional feeling. Because again, I'm Egyptian. I was raised in a British school and American university, and I remember, like, even my husband jokes, he's like, when Hanan gets a bit mad, it's the BBC. It's like it goes all in, it's all English, all very formal and stuff. And I can see how that embodies that personality in me, just comes out.
But do you know why you can swear in English but not in Arabic? And you can love in Arabic but not love in English, especially for us who's we're natives, of Arabic after all.
Yes.
I think it's that we also kind of create a detachment from the language. So when I swear in English, it doesn't really mean that much to me.
Yeah,
The word
I can say the F-bombs as many times as I can. It's okay.
but never in Arabic. And the same goes,
no.
right? You would say an ahibbak. But I love you. No, it's not. It doesn't weigh the same.
Yeah, and that's fascinating. It's those as well. What you're also implying are the emotional layers of language and it being used, and that brings us to the business that you wanted to bring all of this into Serve. And I know Creative Avenue is embodiment for you. It's about using language for social good. It's about looking at the culture, and it's about looking at it within an innovative framework that you came up with. Let's talk about the framework and then see how Creative Avenue came to life.
I've been inspired. I first of all, I love writing. I'm an author myself, and I love writing. I journal, I write. My life dream is actually writing a novel. I've written academic books, but not a novel yet. But I've been inspired by research, by my own writings and my own work, my own teaching. I've taught composition on a college level, and I love experiential papers. I love experiential writings. So I've seen myself during the last 20 years that I was able to replace many. So I always said I'm a dean who's also a tea person. I'm a dean who's also a communication specialist. So because of that, and I'm very creative as well. So I don't know, it sounded a bit snob, but
No, you are creative. I'll say, and she's also very creative. I've seen it.
No, I'm very creative and all over the place. This is
Yes.
also a feature of creativity. So what happened is I've noticed that whatever is written for me is not enough. There is a disconnect between what is written and between the reality that we live in and the context. Because it's also multi-layered, just like us. So I would never ask someone to write a speech for me. I write all of my speeches. Of course, I give public talks and all that. But I've noticed even when it comes to media and dealing with media and the simplest PRs, I made sure that I write it myself because I'm the one who knows the story. And I'm the one who is not only the customer, the client, I'm also a participant in this culture.
Yes.
And I'm a voice, I'm a voice. So this, led me to thinking about Creative Avenue. Creative Avenue is actually an agency that's all about storytelling and building narratives for social good. Social good is huge. What is social good? How do you really be a driver to social good through a company, through a business construct? We're at a soft launching right now. I'm very excited to see how the framework that I've created would actually translate into reality. So I have created a framework that was inspired by everything that I told you, and of course the work of other people like Marshall Gans from Harvard University and building campaigns. So how do you build campaigns, whether they're digital campaigns or social or community-based campaigns that really could be mobilized and could be translated into reality for a good cause?
Yes.
And who really defines the causes and all that? And this is why when you tell me, if you ask me, for example, do you think you want to go international, for example? I love my locality. I love the fact that I'm from here and I understand the context. And the context itself is also challenging because we're talking about Qatar. And Qatar is very multicultural. And there are many cultural shifts that happens between a day and the other. Yeah, you've seen how things shifted during 2022 World Cup.
Yes.
So there are factors that so we have to really stay attuned to the culture and and be sensitive to it. So yes, this is what Creative Avenue is. We use language and the power of storytelling to create campaigns for social good and build alliances, because after all, this is what we want. It's not only a term of business working with this client or that client. No, it's a level of partnership to really be participants and change.
I want your insights in something because, we've been saying social good and social impact from the beginning. And I know this is at core what you stand for. And yet we see corporates and companies at large to go on what they call the CSR, corporate social responsibility activities, campaigns, whatever it is. Where are you seeing the similarities and or the gaps that you would love, and which is what has inspired you that Creative Avenue could fit in that space and do more when it comes to supporting companies and their CSR objectives?
Okay, so social responsibility, of course, is a box in all of our KPIs. Some people deal with it as, a chore that we have to do and we tick it off. this is where Creative Avenue is coming in and trying to change that mindset, really. And this is where research comes into. I've been looking at consumerism, right? And how consumerism have actually engulfed all of our lives. But it is here to stay after all, because at the same time, we've got this consumer culture, which we are all a part of it, but also we have this emerging consciousness among consumers. So you see people want to eat healthy, buy products that are eco-friendly, right?
Yeah.
So you see that emerging. And you see at the same time, people also wanting to contribute to a global consciousness of empathy and contributing to what is right and what people really after COVID-19, so Corona and COVID-19, and this is what I believe in, I think they got the shock that we are so fragile as humans. And one part of the world said, ouch, we all said, ouch.
It was like yep. It's like a bushfire across the world.
Totally. So this is where I personally started advocating, and I started my activism. But also, people have started really opening up to topics that are beyond their locality. So, for example, you see campaigns going very viral, campaigns that started with a hashtag, right?
Yes.
Me too. Black Lives Matter. So this shows you the power really of words and of campaigning. So definitely it's not a matter of ticking a box. So how do you focus on the power, give the consumer again the power and his agency, and tell him, after all, this we are talking about an educated, intelligent consumer, right? Because when we talk about social media, really, seriously, you see now how boycotting Israeli products have led to the closure of many big brands around the world, or the loss of money. So I come from that perspective. I come from Creative Avenue is not to work with everyone, definitely. We're not to work with brands whose mission is purely to sell. We are to work with formal, informal social actors, government, but also the private and the in-betweens. And the social actors who started this health and climate consciousness in Qatar bring their voices to the forefront. And all of us want to engage with bigger causes than us. We all have that inside us, and see how we mobilized for Gaza and we're mobilizing for Sudan and Lebanon. So this is where Creative Avenue comes, dealing with serious people and serious entities and serious brands who want to be one actor of a bigger change.
I love that. Yeah. And I think that's what's very important as well, because then your role is not just, as you said, I'm going to help you sell more. It's actually, first, I'm going to help you find out, if you don't already know, what do you stand for and how can we communicate that to your stakeholders? Exactly. And this is the campaign that then rolls out, but also campaigns as part of your framework, it's kind of multi-layer. It's not one hashtag, it's not one message, it's not one communication. It has to be consistent as well.
Definitely. So I've created a framework based on 4 pillars, and I would really love to show them how one campaign can lead to a change in society's mindset. It does, and it can happen, of course, if you speak their language, if you use the values and you're aligned with the values that they believe in, and if you connect the values that they believe in to the values of the cause that you're trying to promote. So this is why I say I'm very local in this sense, because I'm very sensitive to the local context, and I understand the goodness that is there, that needs guidance to engage with bigger issues and bigger problems.
Yep. Dr. Khalid Sarr, who's watching us, and he's put a question in, and I love that. Dr. Khalid's one of the top scientists in the world and a dear friend. So before I get to the question, or let me frame his question in the part. I worked, as I shared with you before, I worked on the communication side. So my background started in marketing, so I did a lot of communication work and stuff. And one of the main issues out of most agencies, whether they are local or not, was getting, as you were talking about, it's the essence of the word and the language and the culture embodied in the text. So Google Translate was horrendous trying to get one sentence out. But Dr. Khalid here is talking about what's beyond Google Translate, and he's talking about generative AI. So he's asking you if, like, how are you experiencing with generative AI in writing and editing, and what can you see the social impact is of this technology?
Yeah, I'm someone who embraces change. Very flexible, very resilient in that sense. So I'm not against AI, and I'm not scared of it. And I am, a professor at the university. So, my students, for example, just submitted their papers, and I told them, look, whether you use AI or not, I really hope that you manage to read and edit and use the right prompts, and so you took a part of this writing. I'm not going to even put it through a detector, because they will be standing there presenting it to us. If that was the way for them to stand there and present it to us, this is all I want, to say the truth. So the challenge now is everyone wants to teach you how to implement and employ AI in your business. As a mentor, I love creating teams and then empowering them. So I'm creating a small team of writers, of specialists in different areas, and I will definitely go with them through that, because we all need to learn. How would we use AI in a way that would complement? Because really, creative avenue is to do exactly the opposite. AI could replace humans by using text, ready-made texts.
Yes.
Do we want that? How would this ready-made text resonate and speak to the individual, to the consumer whom we want to speak to make him and mobilize him to, let's say, call for whatever it is we want them to call for, right? Whether it is, climate justice or whatever it is, right? So yes, I'm not scared of AI. I've seen how, for example, translation tools. I've established the Transition Interpreting Institute, and from day one we said we will use those tools to make life easier for our translators. But the post editing that the translators put after using those tools are much longer in time and effort. So I don't think a machine is going to replace us soon.
Oh, that I know that. And I think there's also the kind of what you're touching on is really, really important. And that's what I keep advocating for as well. I'm like, please, I use ChatGPT on a daily basis and stuff. But at the end of the day, as you were saying, I don't want something that's generic and looks automated and kind of has no voice. I still want to always make sure that my voice is integrated there, my viewpoints, my world viewpoint, because that is where you're coming from. The world viewpoint of being immersed in this culture and being representative of what it means and the value system of it and stuff. And this is what you're doing, right?
Yeah, and the voice carries a soul too. So and how this part of the world, we always say that religions and spirituality came from the West, from the East, right? Yeah. So this part of the world is very rich in terms of spirituality, in terms of customs, traditions. You can't be an outsider and know all of that. Definitely not.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm just checking if we have any other questions. Okay, people are reacting. So we have some viewers on LinkedIn. I'm sure there are on YouTube. Unfortunately, the platform doesn't always show me who's where and stuff. But before, I want to touch on one last aspect of it before we move on. Now, we've addressed the the innovation and looking at whether it's the innovative framework, that you've created, or the innovative tools that you're using. We're looking at the culture, we're looking at the language. Now, how do we bring it all together if we are addressing how do businesses leverage on those components and what you are advocating for towards business success? And the success is kind of any kind of impact that we've been addressing so far.
Interesting question. Again, because I'm an academic converting into business, and I don't see it this way. What I see partners who seek our help to engage in the rhetoric about, for example, people with disabilities. Okay, and they come to us because they have a sincere. It comes from the right place, right? That this is the cause that we want to address, and this is a cause that we want to embed in our narrative to the world. They only know that, but we know exactly how to do that, how to place them in the society, but not just in terms of language, in terms of action too. You cannot advocate for people with disabilities, without using the right terminology, without having businesses that are accessible to them, right? So we give them an overall picture of how it is if you are to do the right thing, from sometimes modifying your own setting, to the language that you use, to the campaigns that we can help create, to, after all, not just sell, to bring those people whom you are advocating for to become a part of your clientele, your people. They become associated to you. And that's what really, what I love about the whole thing, that impact part of it.
And I love how you've reframed success from that perspective into actually more social engagement, more alignment, coming from a place of, I want to say passion, but I know it's difficult to say passion when you're talking about a corporate or you're talking about a governmental organization, but again, it's coming from that heart. And this is where the success comes in, because that's where the alignment comes in all across.
And Dr. Hanan, you would be, I know that you know that. The scene, the business scene right now in Qatar is really is vibrant. It's the youth is leading it, right? So those who are younger in age, who are graduates, who actually have their own causes. So it's really easy to connect one-on-one with the founders of those businesses. And I've been meeting with many who would tell me, but do you think I can actually be able to frame my business to advocate for this? That would be amazing, right? And we are all humans and we go through stuff. And, I've seen people unfortunately, we shouldn't wait until I get sick, for example, and I get MS, for example, to raise awareness about MS. But there are many issues and many causes that collectively we really need to stand and advocate for.
Yeah. May I ask an amazing question that would help us kind of bring it all full circle? And I think it's, she says, it's a big scope of a question, but let's address it. So she said, what can we, as in the East, do more to reshape the narrative about us for the best social impact? We all see now that the perception of who we are is lost in the noise and the kind of the clutter. So if we're looking at kind of, and I know this, we can have many episodes talking just about that topic, how do we change a narrative? But from your perspective and your involvement in multiple organizations and all your roles, what are some, which you were just addressing? Can I do this? Can my business kind of change narrative towards that? How can we do that?
Definitely. So collective action is very important. We need to be a critical mass, so our voice needs would be heard. Definitely, changing narrative is possible. Definitely, and what I see at this point, to say the truth, it's not that they don't know because they started knowing. And let's say if the people did not know and believed their media and believed those colonial narratives about Arabs and as Berbers and all that, let's say they believed it for some time. Now we've got social media, right? We've got citizen journalism. They see everything. So now everything, all of those narratives have been exposed. Our duty right now is to have a narrative, a counter narrative, and bring our histories to the center, bring our voices to the center, not to forget our women to the center, okay? Because this genocide is against women and children, really, after all. And so it is possible, definitely, but connection, partnership, connection, and even businesses, and let me rephrase that. Businesses should be leading the way, because we see how money talks, and we see how boycotting is working. So definitely raise awareness, raise consciousness here, and have one narrative to share and to speak. And I'm a big also advocate of bilingualism. Speak to them with their language. When you speak to your people, speak to your people in their language. But when you speak to them in their language. That's big.
And I totally agree. And from that perspective as well, I always think that I'm a global citizen at heart. And that means that I will be me, all of me, with everyone around the world. And that is whether that gets represented as me being a woman, as me being an Egyptian, as me being Middle Eastern, as me living in Qatar. I think each one of us carries so many identities that by default, you can be changing the narrative for one person, and that is the ripple impact effect. And that's what you're advocating for.
I agree. And this is why you do, right? When you give talks, when you travel, when you connect with people in the West, this is exactly what you do. So each one of us really has a role to play.
Yeah. Dr. Amal, I know, well, we've passed the half-hour mark, so I'm going to respect your time. And I know we can be talking for hours, but I'll ask you my wrap-up question, which I ask everyone. Empower to Grow in Business is the name of the podcast. How does this phrase resonate with you personally?
Empower to grow.
Empowered to grow.
I love it.
You want to call it empowered to grow in business. It's your call. How does it resonate?
It speaks to me. For someone who thinks about, thinks of herself as a mother, as a giver, as a mentor. If you really want to grow within any context, it's not only you. You need to really empower the whole context. So this is how I look at it. I always speak about how if you want to empower a girl or a woman or a child, you need to also empower their context, to embrace them, to give them, to push them forward, because there are there are many lost ambitions in this world, right? We don't want to do that. We want to cultivate and empower.
I love that. I love the contextual part of the empowerment, because this is part of who you are and what you represent. Dr. Amal Al-Malki, it's been an absolute honor and pleasure to have you on the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me, Dr. Hannah. Thank you.
Thank you. And for everyone who has been watching us today, as Dr. Amal advocates, and definitely backing her, I've always backed her in that sense. You are the advocate for social impact, for social good, for social change. You use your voice to represent who you are and what's at your heart. And as always, I hope I see you. I'm happy that now every Tuesday rather than Wednesday. But I wish you love, abundance, and prosperity. And I can't wait to see you next time. Bye for now. Thank you for listening to the Empower to Grow podcast. I'll catch you on the next episode. And until then, know that empowered you empowers others. Love, abundance, and prosperity to you all.